Recording in progress. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Gestalt Get-Together. Whether you are joining on the live stream, you're here to get some CEUs, or if you're listening later on a streaming platform, I'm so glad that you've joined. My name is Corinne Zmoos MS, CCC-SLP. I'm a speech language pathologist who works with autistic children and Gestalt language processors, and I also love to use music in that work, the math of music. The Gestalt Get-Together is a podcast that talks about the autistic neurotype, this emerging framework and lens of Gestalt language processing, echolalia special interests, and all of these different factors as they relate to what we as therapists do, how parents are navigating the routines with their kids, and really how we can sharpen up and figure out where to go next with this information that we're all really eager to obtain and then apply next day with these kids that we really care about. If you are joining to obtain CEUs, I know we're coming up towards the end of the year, and I hope that you've got enough, but if not, and you need the hour for today, make sure that you get credit on SpeechTherapyPD. Make sure you finish that quiz before the end of the day. And if you're not yet a member, feel free to use my code Gestalt33 to get this episode and your CEU for free. All right, let's get into the good stuff. This is a popular episode. We had a lot of people express interest in coming this evening. And I think that's because the topic is really unique. We have a speech therapist who is also a Gestalt language processor. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about their experience of navigating this role, learning about being a GLP, and then working with GLPs at the same time. So let me introduce you a little bit to Andi before I bring them on. So Andi is a clinician who brings both professional expertise and lived experience as an autistic person to their work. They earned dual bachelor's degrees in speech language pathology and audiology and psychology. So SLP and audiology and psychology, those are the two, followed by a master's in speech language pathology from Towson University. Andi began their career working in non-public special education settings, where they developed a passion for working with neurodivergent students and complex communicators. Their clinical interests center on AAC, Gestalt language processors, and then creating environments where kids feel respected and really safe. In their sessions, Andi is dedicated to reinforcing communication in all of its forms, supporting autonomy at every step of the way. And they really strive to build trust and self-directed expression in neurodivergent kids. Andi provides telehealth and private practice services for a range of kids these days, but their GLP clients are certainly a highlight. So with that, I'm going to invite on Andi to the Gestalt Get-Together.
Hi.
Hey, welcome.
How's it going?
Good, I'm so glad to have you. Okay, so I just laid out a little bit about who you are, but I want to hear in your own words, how did you end up here as a speech pathologist about to talk about Gestalt language processing? Tell us the story.
Yeah. So once again, I'm Andi. My pronouns are they, them. So I feel like a lot of SLPs have that one moment where they're like, this is my calling, this is my why. And honestly, if I'm being frank, I didn't have that. I didn't have like this one moment as a kid where I'm like, I'm going to be an SLP when I grow up. I started undergrad at Towson as a music ed major, and I changed my major 7 times, which is a little silly of me, but I am very indecisive. I just knew that I wanted to help people. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up being a psychology major. I got that degree. But as I was learning about development, I just knew that I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So I applied to my school's OT and speech program, and I told myself, Andi, this is the last time you're changing your major. Whatever program takes you, you're going to stick with it. And ta-da, only the undergrad speech program accepted me. And so that's where I got into speech. I remember distinctly sitting in the music building, dropping all of my classes that I had for the spring and adding all of my speech prerequisites, my anatomy and physiology class, all of those classes, kind of on a whim. And here I am, an SLP.
Um, Tell me about like clinical fellowship or like first jobs. What were those like for you, and what were some of the areas you were drawn to?
Yeah, so my clinical fellowship and my second year practicing, I worked in a non-public special education school, mostly supporting a pretty small caseload of non-speaking autistic elementary schoolers. Loved them. I love AAC. It's really my niche. And all of my kids basically had AAC devices. That really is my bread and butter, just working with non-speaking students and AAC. And then recently I've pivoted to working full-time in teletherapy, which I was a bit nervous about, but I also went to school during COVID. So teletherapy isn't anything brand new to me. And right now I'm supporting a wide range of clients. I have some toddlers, some kids, some adults, which it's nice to get that wide range, but a good chunk of my caseload is still those young GLPs in stage 1 and stage 2, and they hold a special place in my heart.
And from what I've heard, you're pretty great with them. And
Don't want to
part
toot my
of
own horn.
part part of why that might be, I might be wrong here, is there might be components of their life or their communicative profile that you might relate to. Want to share more about that?
Yeah, so recently discovered that I'm a GLP. And if we're being honest, my hot take, I didn't really buy into Gestalt language processing when I first heard of it. I heard about it like once maybe in grad school, and it didn't really like click to me. I was just like, okay. And then I heard about it a few times in my clinical fellowship. And when I heard about it, I just thought to myself, isn't this how everyone acquires language? Aren't we just taking language acquisition as we know it and just kind of spinning it into some different words and kind of tying a pretty bow on it? Um, and then I kind of took some time to really read about it and then realized, wait, like maybe just because it's new and it's an emerging framework, and because there's, maybe some limited EVP on it, that doesn't disclude how it can be helpful to people. And this can really help individuals access language. And the more I read about it, I was like, wait, this also kind of sounds like me. And then I was like, but how is this me? And so, yeah, it wasn't until I think this summer that I really fully solidified in my brain, like I could really be a GLP.
And I think another part of that you're open about, which I think is really powerful, is that you yourself are autistic. So, what's the relationship between that part of your identity and your neurotype and then the work that you do?
Yeah. So I received a formal autism diagnosis as a minor, but I feel like I never truly conceptualized that I was autistic and how it truly colored every experience and relationship I had until I was well into adulthood. Um, when I received my diagnosis, I had received some services that were really centered around masking my autism, and I really carried that around. Like for example, I had an eye contact goal, which still I have to work very hard to break that. Always looking at someone's hairline right in between their eyes to kind of imitate eye contact. Um, Being told to only stim in like very private places, stimming in bathrooms was a big thing that I was taught when I was younger, just to make neurotypical people comfortable. But during my first few years as an SLP, I remember just feeling such autistic burnout so consistently from my work because I was around so many autistic kids, but I'm masking at work. And there just got to be a point where I was experiencing such cognitive dissonance, and it was so burdensome to me because I was going into these sessions telling my autistic students that who they are is great, their brains are great. Autism isn't a bad word, but like I wasn't walking the walk, you know, like at the same time, I wasn't showing up authentically. So I just genuinely felt like I was doing my students a disservice at that point. And so at that point, I was still working in my school, and I ended up self-disclosing to my administration and started giving myself some of the accommodations I knew that I needed to just lessen the burden a little bit, which helped me stay really regulated and present with my students. And when I was able to show up authentically as myself to my students, not only did I feel more present, I was able to give better services to my students. I was able to I was able to advocate for myself, which also helped me teach my kids how to advocate for themselves. Just because like I'm literally going through it with them. As an adult, they're a kid, but still telling them that like if you need a break, if you need sensory regulation tools, we're going to work on the language around that, and letting them know like it is hard, like these things are hard, but like it's all worth it at the end of the day because you're allowed to walk this world being who you are.
What do you feel like have been some of the challenging parts of the neurotype that you have with the demands or expectations of the field that we're in?
Great question. um, I think sometimes, especially with the population that I work with, especially when I was in person,
Yeah.
I was getting drained so easily just because I feel very deeply and I put so much of myself into my work. It was really hard for me to do like that balancing act of prioritizing my needs as an autistic person and also helping my autistic students and working through really difficult sessions and things like that. I think that was the hardest part after starting to disclose at work that I was autistic. Um, and also, I think sometimes working with specifically families that haven't fully accepted their children's diagnoses, and trying to work through their ableism a little bit, can be really difficult to like not take it personally because I know that it's not directed towards me, but it does impact me, the things that they say, and trying to stay very neutral. I think those are the two biggest things.
Yeah. Um, I'm wondering about because it's so interesting. Think about a lot of the people who listen to the podcast are working with kids who fit that profile of GLP. A lot of parents were raising a kid that once they heard about the GLP profile, they're like, that's my kid. But, you know, 20 years from now, those kids are going to be able to look back and be like, oh, that Gestalt means this. They figured this out for me. Like, they're going to have these memories of, and maybe be able to like laugh with their family about Gestalts. And I feel like that's something that's been happening for you as you've considered yourself a GLP, figuring out, oh, that was a Gestalt for me. Do you have any examples of that?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course I do.
of course.
um, so ever since I like started taking psych classes and speech classes, whenever we're learning about development, I would always like ask my mom questions like, "Hey, when did I start doing this? Start doing
Yeah.
that?" And like my mom's like, "I don't know. I'm one of three kids." Like my mom would just straight up be like, "I don't know the difference between you guys." But this past summer, I was talking to my mom, and I she was asking about my job. And so I was explaining GLP to her a little bit. Like sometimes kids speak in phrases that sometimes don't really mean what you think, like at face value. And she usually, once again, doesn't really answer any of my developmental questions. But she was like, you did start talking a bit later than your brother and your sister. But it wasn't just one word, it was a phrase. And I was like, what do you mean? Tell me a little bit more. Like pulling out my pen and paper. And um, she, so she's just sitting there trying to think. Like this is back, I don't know, 2000. Um, and she was like, it was Go Nanas or something. And so I was like, Go Nana? I don't know anything about Go Nanas. So find Corinne on Instagram, and I'm like, um, Corinne, are you able to help me figure out this Gestalt from 2000? And I feel like now you kind of have to take it away. How do
Okay.
you do the detective work?
Yeah, so I love when people DM me on Instagram. I've been able to have some really nice connections on there. So anyone who's listening, like, don't be shy. Reach out if you have like any questions, or especially if you need someone to do some detective work for you about a media gestalt. I love it. I think first, let's talk about detective work. This is a phrase that a lot of people reattribute to Marge Blanc from 2012 work about NLA. And detective work is really like looking a couple layers below the surface of the words that are said or sung to figure out what is that deeply personal meaning of this utterance or this unit for the person who's saying it. And it would, it's also called a script or delayed echolalia, delayed echolalia. But that detective work means let me step back from I love the way you said face value. Let me take a step back from the words at face value and figure out what is the personal experiential meaning of the person who's saying that. Um, and I'm gonna nerd out really quick. I'm gonna get back to the story, I promise. But I found this quote from Piaget from 1962, where he said that echolalia can help children prolong and master their visual and auditory experiences. And I just think that's such a
I love that.
oh my God, prolong and master their visual and auditory experiences. So like, what is this child using? Like, what are they trying to prolong and master? What visual auditory experience from the past did they map that language onto to be able to take it with them? Um, and so for Go Nanas, you reached out, and of course, if I'm going to do good detective work, especially if we're going like into the historical record, I need information. So a good detective, we got to be prepared, right? I got out my magnifying glass, I put on my like fedora, and I was ready to go. So I needed to know, so around 2000, right? And I think didn't your brother had some sort of detail?
Yeah, no, my
Your sister,
sister's
yeah.
is a lot older than me. So
Yeah.
she was like, yeah, like your brother would watch or like play a game, I don't remember, on the family computer. And I think there was like a monkey or something. Like I don't remember.
That
Yeah.
there were some little details there where people kind of had small pieces to pull in, which was very helpful. So we kind of, those are some clues. We were able to zoom in and think about, okay, how old was your brother at this time? What would he have been watching? It was probably Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, so that helps me narrow down as well. Um, and then thinking about this Go Nanas, what might be the emotion behind it? When did you say it? And what was the feeling? So we were trying to figure out like when did itty bitty Andy say this thing? And I think we were able to find like there was one kind of moment when you would say it, which
Yes. So it was like anytime I felt really overwhelmed in my body, I would just go into a corner and go Nanas.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had potential time period, trying to narrow that down. We had the emotion behind it. So maybe like some sort of heightened emotion. Um, and then we just like keep funneling down. So then I'm like, okay, and the detail of the monkey. So then I start Googling and looking. Monkey, video game, Nickelodeon, 2000s. I'm all over Reddit. And then that phrase, go nanas. And I start funneling down and down and down. And I have to go on the Internet Archive at this point. Like that is how far I had to go. It was one of the best nights of my life. Let me just say. Let me just say. But I ended up finding there was a show. where there was only like 8 episodes. 6 of them are gone. They are nowhere to be found. They are deleted from history. But one of the 2 that was still available was the episode where there was a monkey hosting a show, and there was a young child who was extremely upset because of something their parent did. And after this child had like a big emotional experience where she was extremely sad, extremely frustrated because of what an adult did, then right after, the host said, "Go Nanas." So we think we found the map.
Hmm.
So let's pull back again. So the connection between that moment in that show and then what little Andi did, like, how did that mapping feel for you?
Great question. You know, like it was just, it takes off such, when you find a gestalt or a script that like really perfectly fits, especially for me, like a gestalt that has like that visual too, that really perfectly fits, it
Mm-hmm.
takes off such like cognitive load.
Ooh.
Um, when you're like in that moment. So like little me, I don't know how to express my emotions, but like I have this exact like clip, and also the little girl in that video had the same name as my mom, which is so funny.
Yeah.
But like I would be upset. I would go into a corner. My family would be like, Andi, what's wrong? Go Nanas. They would know that I was feeling overwhelmed. I needed space because, and like my family didn't know anything about GLP. It was 2000, but like they knew that I was referencing this game, this show that my brother watched, which is so cool. And so that's something that I still carry around when I'm thinking about my clients that I serve now, like especially when there's that visual.
Yeah.
Um, it really does release and lessen that cognitive load when it comes to communicating, especially in emotionally heightened times. I know that there is a shorter phrase that I can use that really encapsulates how I feel. And I don't have to go into like this whole sentence or like this whole long story about how I'm feeling. I have something really short that people know that I'm referencing. And if they don't really get it or they need a reminder, they can always go back and watch whatever I'm talking about.
Hmm. Can you share more about like the visual side of it? Like the relationship between the visual and the words. Is that for you in your experience? Is it a still image? Is it a like kind of like a video? I know that you said that you don't think in pictures or videos, right?
Yeah.
What's the name? What's the word for that?
Aphantasia.
Aphantasia. Beautiful name for a daughter.
That's
But
my first kid's name.
um, this is my daughter, Echolalia. I would though. I would. But for you, like the visual pairing, so that needs to be like an external visual, or what does that mean?
For me, I think that, what a great question. Like, I don't see it in my head like after the moment,
Yeah, yeah.
but like I think that it's helpful for me because not only does it help me, but it helps my communication partners because it gives them a little bit more um, to work off of, if that makes sense. Like, it's not just words that they hear, they know that there's like a visual that can go with it, but there's also like when I'm when I have a gestalt, it I don't know how to word it. It's like it's not just the words, like it could be based off of what's happening in the visual. So like
Yeah.
obviously like go nanas, it has nothing to do with go nanas. It has to do with the girl right beforehand who's having this meltdown.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that like auditory gestalts are so cool, but I also really love like that visual aspect if it's part of a movie, part of a show,
Yeah.
part of a music video. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times I get stuck when thinking about other people's gestalts, only thinking about the words of what they're saying, and trying to pair that with like an experience. But I think it's also really helpful to remember that maybe there is a visual aspect that we're not considering.
Yeah.
and really looking at the visual aspect to see if there's any clues or hints there too.
Yeah, and there's so many directions that the detective work can go. I think where I typically start when I'm trying to coach people on how to start this work is the first thing I say is like, okay, think about the noun. Focus first on the nouns and whatever this utterance or lyric is. So you start with the nouns, and I'm like, okay, if it just happened and we're in the room with the kid, look around. Do you see any of these nouns around you? Sometimes it is like it's that. It's like that easy. We're like, okay, great. They are referencing something that is right here in the room, but it was just in this longer package with other words or with prosody or with musicality. Um, then if it's not in that immediate setting, I'm still thinking noun based. And that I think that's also the most concrete for people who are getting started with this. You know, if I'm like, let's start with prepositions and like the positionality of the child in relation. No, we're not going to do that. That's like step three. But um with so like immediacy of the nouns, and then I'm thinking, okay, so let me give an example. So of a client who was playing with a merry-go-round toy, obviously a Polly Pocket, because who would I be? It's not a Polly Pocket moment. And he had the little tiny character in merry-go-round, and he said something, I have to find the exact quote, but it's something, he said, gonna see the zebra. I'm like, there's no zebra on here. So, like, face value, zebra. So, first line of defense, look around the room. There's no zebra there. So then we took a step back and I said, okay, where does this noun or this object exist in meaningful memory for him? And they're like, zoo, no, no books, no movies. And then I was thinking, okay, what's the like zebra merry-go-round, zebra merry-go-round. And I was like, okay. So I'm pulling out, like further and further. And then I thought, okay, wait, has he ever been on a merry-go-round that had a zebra that you could ride?
Mm.
And they were like, oh my God, mom takes out the phone and finds the video. His like first time on a merry-go-round, he was sitting on the zebra and he had seen that video. And so it was that like that mapped on that merry-go-round, the language or the unit that is layered on top of that has the word zebra in it, or it elicits this visual or this feeling related to zebra-ness. So that's kind of where like the noun detective work comes in. I also then we can move into like verbs. So if there's a verb, if they're referencing some sort of action, where else has their body had that experience that the verb is referencing, that the connection might be there. I also like prepositions are also a really good one. So like what's the positionality of the child? If they're underneath something, what else in their life, in their memory, were they feeling under? So there's all these different ways of like changing the lens on how you think about the words. And it's always about what did this kid witness that their brain has associated with this string of sounds that they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you have any other gestalts like from your history or like newer ones too?
Yeah, I have some newer ones.
Okay.
So, one of my favorite things about working with GLPs is I love to give them some of my gestalts and I love to take theirs. We have like a little yard sale. So, when I was working in the schools, my office mate had a student. Uh, and so every Wednesday at the school, it was pizza day. We always had pizza on Wednesdays. And my coworker was trying to finish up a session with this GLP, and the girl was just ready for food. Like it's pizza day. Like come on. And so she just straight up looks at the door, looks at my friend, and goes, "Come on, it's pizza time." And so now I've taken that for myself. And now anytime I need a break, I'm just, come on, it's pizza time. And I love that one. It was one of the first times I think this GLP had used like a full sentence as a gestalt. And so it was just a really magical moment for this kid. It's also not one of my clients at all, but it's so iconic to me. So now anytime I need a break, come on, it's pizza time. Yeah.
But it's like more than just needing a break. It's like the emotion behind that. Like it's not just like, oh, I need a break. Like it's like, oh, come on. It's got like that timbre and that feeling behind it.
Yeah.
I feel like I referenced this one before on the podcast, but I can never get over it. One that because I pick up so many of them from my clients too, um, where one time I walked into a session and the kid like hadn't slept well the night before, so he did not want me there.
Hmm.
I walk in the door, he looks up and he goes, "Oh no, my God." Which he's like, "Oh God, here she is again." But now like that has become something I reference when like I do not want to see someone and I don't want to interact with them. It's like, "Oh no, my God."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really I think the detective work part of it is it's really satisfying to find to kind of
Mhm.
find like what mapped and why. And I get I get so much joy out of seeing parents like build their detective work skills. And then they'll like I'll be in a session, they'll be like, guess what? And they're so excited to share kind of like you can the way they're explaining it, it's like lily pads being jumped. They're like, okay, this, and then I realized this, and then here, and then this, and it was from a Bluey episode. Really, really cool to see like that chain of events and how they're able to move through it away from that face value. Okay, so something I often hear about when I'm talking about strategies for echolalia, for special interest play, musical language. The thing is, I love to talk about. People have a response to the tune of, that's great, very cool. I work in the schools. I'm not sure how to bring that in. So I'd like to hear about, with your experience in the school setting, what were elements of this work that you were able to do to help these kids with their language development?
Yeah. Working in schools. So at the school I was at, I will say I did have the advantage of having a very small caseload. And I saw my students 3 to 4 times a week. So since I saw them so frequently, I got to really know their interest very well. And I got to model a lot of gestalts related to their interests or to my interests very consistently for them, which definitely is not typical for school-based SLPs. I will acknowledge that. I was very lucky. Um, so something that I really found interesting over my few years working with GLPs as a GLP, I started touching on is that sometimes I think modeling my gestalts when I don't know my students' interests yet, just modeling my own gestalts or modeling things with such like kind of passion can be really motivating to them. Like if you're kind of short on time or you really just don't know the kid yet, I feel like that is something that I tend to go to as I'm starting to learn about one of my students. And I think that that's partially because there's like not that uncertainty when you're modeling. I think that sometimes when you're trying to model maybe a new gestalt that is related to their interests, but you're not sure if it's going to stick, they can kind of sense it. Um, but if you're just modeling something that you know that you like, or like something that um, you truly like feel bought into, um, there's more confidence with it, and that can within itself grab students' attention. So a lot of times I do kind of mix in my gestalts as well. So not only presenting things related to what they're interested in. Um, so I think that's similar to how like I pick up on students' gestalts and kind of embed them into my own gestalt library. I I pick up on things that are interesting, whether it's the words itself or the melody of the gestalt. Um, as long as you're kind of presenting it with that excitement and that confidence, that's kind of what sticks out to me as a GLP. Um, but overall, what's hard about treating GLPs in the school, I think truly is the collaboration aspect that comes with treating GLPs. I find it really important to be able to collaborate pretty regularly with caregivers and teachers and other people that are really important in the student's life in order to really be able to do that detective work. Um, and in schools, you know, time is that really precious resource that's so limited. So finding the time to collaborate is really hard. And even with my small caseload, it was still really hard. Um, and so still trying to make it a priority. I know it's it's hard. But really just trying to find the time is probably the hardest thing, but when you're able to, um, and letting the caregivers and, you know, stakeholders know that like this is really integral to um, just their language development and really getting that buy-in. I think once they have that buy-in, that's when things can change. And they're able to, you know, send a quick email like, hey, this is what so and so has been thinking about. I think it could be from this. Or they've really been watching this video. I don't know if this will be helpful. I loved those kind of emails when I was working in the schools. Even if it was a really long video, I didn't have time to watch the whole thing. But I knew that I could potentially pull something from that video, or that my student was going to pull something from that video.
Um, Thinking about so the collaboration side of it, and I think that's a good the collaboration's a good like overall one. I like that at the end you zoomed into what like that could look like on a smaller or acute scale of like shooting over, hey, this is what I know that they're interested in. This is what's working here. Kind of like having, I've referred to it in the past as like a scriptionary. So like, do we have this dictionary of scripts for this kid? So that, and that's something I want to get better about too, is like updating it and keeping people informed. Because again, if it doesn't have that face value, like it's not clear to like the gym teacher or like the music teacher what they're referencing, that's going to be a missed opportunity where the kid may send the signal, the serve, and they're not getting that return. So there's a missed opportunity there, which is like in the hallway. And we know that every successful interaction builds up over time to build that kid's confidence. I've also found that that kind of collaboration can be really powerful because some GLPs, anecdotally, longitudinally, across, you know, just building all of these different stories of what we're seeing work, they might use certain scripts or gestalts with one person, but not with another. So, like, I have a couple clients where, like, there are utterances that are only for me because those might be mapped to our sessions, to who I am, and to the emotions of when we spend our time together. But when there's collaboration with, like, I just met with a school SLP last week where we were able to talk about here are like the heavy hitters. Like these are the utterances, these are the gestalts that are like she's knocking out of the park during our sessions. What if you sprinkled those into your work so that this child might be able to bridge and have like a realization almost of, wait, I can use these with other people. It's not just for the time that I spend with Corinne. Um, what I have seen in some kids is that when other people start using those in different environments, then it's almost just like this click of, wait a minute, I can use these in other places. So sending out information of like, hey, this is working. Can you try this too?
Yeah.
When you did you ever do any group sessions or was it one-to-one?
I did some groups.
Okay. And a smile. Because that's another common question. Somebody hit me with that one at ASHA after my talk, and I froze. I was like, like, how do we do any of this in a group setting? Did you have any moments of success or anything that you recommend?
Um, what a great question. Um, groups are so interesting when you have two GLPs, but I think I try if, like, depends on caseload,
Yeah.
but if you have the flexibility of like really trying to match students for a group based on interests and, goals too, obviously. But that's where I found success. I had one group, well, it was a dyad, not a group, it was two.
Yeah.
But they were two kids where they had very similar interests. And so it was a little bit easier to model more vague or general gestalts that could apply to either. Um, Still tricky because once again, they're not like super individualized. Um, but once again, just like modeling with a lot of confidence, and making sure that like I'm really bought into what I'm modeling to them and like making sure that there's not that uncertainty um, when I'm modeling, I feel like was really helpful for these kids. They were the funniest dyad. Um, they're by the end, they were um, we were just modeling. I was modeling a lot of things about self-regulation because also being in a group setting like that can be very overstimulating, overwhelming. Um, so I think too, I incorporating some gestalts that are more regulating or are centered around emotional regulation, sensory regulation is really important. And it's something when reflecting, I wish that I had started a lot of my groups with, because it wasn't until kind of like the end of that school year that I was like, wait, if I started with this, that would have been really cool. Um, but I remember one of the kids was having a really hard time. The other girl was like, feelings are okay. Feelings are okay. It's okay. Feelings are okay. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then the other girl said, shut up. But anyway, I digress. um, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways to attempt to, you know, um, create some social connection too when it comes to GLPs. If you're able to kind of group kids based on interest, um, based on already established gestalts too, if gestalts are kind of similar in how they are presenting, or even in their play. I love seeing kind of those motor gestalts where like they have like
Oh,
those like motor loops and seeing like how other kids that have similar loops how they interact with each other. Sometimes it can be really off-putting to the kids, but sometimes it's really cool to see how they can kind of try to integrate each other into their play after a couple sessions too. Um, so I really just try to look kind of holistically at the kid and yeah, and see how my kids can mesh with each other in groups and just trying to model things that could be vague enough to work for both of them, but also still intrinsically motivating enough for them to want to pick it up.
yeah. I like the idea of trying to pair by special interests because then I feel like there's a greater chance of like already having a shared vocabulary. Like we all know those GLPs where like they know like all 32 types of penguins. Like they're the kids who like they love outer space, they love planets or finding shared special interests. So there's a really strong starting point. Um, just like all of us, we light up when we meet other people who share our interests, trying to like strategize there because then they might also be picking up and wanting to like echoing each other too. It's like, oh, I'm hearing this other communication partner who's not this, like, not one of these adults who wants things out of me all the time. But there might also be kind of like that lower pressure from a peer model. And it's like, oh, and they're talking about this thing that I love too. Um, Now, you have shifted into quite a different setting now, into like full-time telehealth. And you've got a couple GLP clients. You've got a huge range from what you shared with me. And those who are listening later can't see, Andi's eyes just got very wide. But I'd like to hear about first, what was that transition like for you in general? And then what has it been like to work with kids who fit that GLP profile, especially with having more contact with the families and schools? So there's a couple of different directions you can go with that.
Yeah. So definitely at first transitioning from school to virtual, I was so hesitant starting my work with GLPs virtually. It was pretty daunting to know that I wasn't going to be there with them physically. I was so nervous about like missing something, missing what's in the room physically, missing like little things that they're saying. And I think overall, I was just so scared about how things were going to change. Like it was a big shift for me as an autistic person too. Everything was about to change for me. So I really had no frame of reference about how I wanted to like shape my sessions too. Like what was going to work for these GLPs that I don't even know yet. So, you know, a lot of trial and error, but I feel like I've fallen into a pretty good rhythm now with most of my GLPs and their families. So I basically start with like kind of a quick recap of their week. And this is really helpful just to hear how the kid's doing, if they have a new interest, if how they're doing gestalt wise, if there's any new gestalts that have emerged or mitigated. So the first 5 minutes, love that with the family, see what's been going on. If something's been specifically difficult, just having that heads up of this is the mood that we're in today. Depending on the age of the kid that I'm working with, we'll either play on Canva, which is my favorite therapy tool.
I talk about Canva all the time on here.
Okay, perfect.
All the
I
time.
love Canva. It's incredible. I don't need to go into a whole thing, but my favorite thing is just to go on to Google and, you know, find characters from whatever their special interest is or whatever. We create some scenes, act out their interests, model gestalts. If I'm not picking the right pictures or they're thinking of something specific, you know, sharing my screen, going to Google with them, going through all the pictures. It's really interesting too, going through on Google and hearing like how they're describing things is something I will always write down, because the way in which they're describing what they want, it gives me a lot of insight on how maybe they have experienced the thing that they're looking for, or where they heard it, where they saw it. Right now I have a client who loves Martha Speaks. I don't know if y'all know Martha Speaks. It's PBS books, and I think now it's shows too. It's a dog who ate alphabet soup and now can speak. It's amazing.
I'm sorry, did you say alphabet?
Alphabet soup.
Attention, everyone. ABCs.
ABC.
Very, very important to this population.
She ate the alphabet soup.
Is that one of the quotes?
No, I'm just reading.
No? Okay.
But my client, at the end of every session, I ask her, like, next session, what should we do? And she'll just say one sentence from a Martha Speaks episode, and I just pull out pictures from like the video, or from, if I can find like a read along on YouTube, just pulling out pictures from the book. And she'll just, like, it's like our 30 minutes go by so fast because we have the visual, and then she'll be like, Andi, I want to look up this. Go to Google. And I'm like, okay, we're going. And then right now she's trying, if anyone can help me, if anyone knows Martha Speaks, I am asking SLPs here. Can I do that? Is that okay if I do that?
Yeah, please
Okay.
address the crowd.
Okay, dear crowd. I'm getting into silly goofy. Let me focus.
No, me too. No. Let's do it.
Okay.
Go
My
off.
client who loves Martha Speaks is looking for Martha Speaks, Martha's stomach growling, ate 100 cookies in the forest. I can't find it. I can't find it. And she's so mad at me. We've been looking for a month now. I can't find the right picture.
Yeah.
So if anyone could find it.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to say you should use ChatGPT, but, right. So,
I cannot.
right. So, and that's, I think, God, that's a whole other topic, is like the way that AI can like help us find answers really quickly, but then also like ethically and like doing your job in line with your values, that can be tough.
Mhm.
So, that is a whole other episode.
Yeah, bring me for that podcast too.
Yeah. So I would like to issue a challenge for people to try and find that without dumping out a whole water bottle and poisoning some small town by using AI. But okay, so we are looking for, the clues are, one more time.
Martha Speaks, stomach growling, ate 100 cookies in the forest.
Great. Do we have a prize for whoever finds it, or?
I will say thank you so much. And my client right now is probably saying thank you so much.
Great. Little handwritten note. No.
Yeah, I'll write it.
All right. All right. That's okay. Great. Martha's, I like that. And that's a cool, yeah, anything with ABCs, because I have so many clients who are hyperlexic, and anything with the alphabet, they go crazy for it. The, okay, here's what I want to hear about. So you get a new client for telehealth, and based on the way your work is structured, like your assigned clients. Have you had experiences where you meet a family and they've never heard about a Gestalt or the GLP profile before?
Yes.
What's that like?
That happens more frequently than not.
Okay.
So I usually have to do evaluation first.
Yeah.
So I do the evaluation, whatever. First session, I run through kind of the basics, and mostly that session is I want to see what the kid's doing, hear how they're talking a little bit more when it's unstructured. And then second session, I'll ask parents, do you notice that your kid ever just like talks in kind of phrases that don't mean what the face value means? I love saying face value.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. I'm like, huh, okay. You keep go like I just dropped that kind of near the front. And then we're playing. And then parents are able to be like, yeah, this thing that just happened right now.
Okay.
That was one of them. And so then I typically self-disclose to families that I'm autistic now. Sometimes parents don't like that their autistic kid is working with autistic.
Yeah, interesting.
I've been dumped a couple times, and
Because of that,
mhm,
presumably. Interesting.
yes.
Whole other episode.
Whole
Whole
episode number
other
3. Episode number
episode.
3.
2026. Watch out.
But so then I tell them that I'm a Gestalt Language Processor.
Yeah.
And so then I put it in like the I perspective of like, this is what I went through or how I experience language. I'm wondering if so-and-so is experiencing language in a similar way as me.
Yeah.
And I find that that kind of takes that pressure off a little bit more. And it's more of like me kind of like that connection seeking more than like I'm diagnosing your kid right now. And then typically I just won't say much about it again until like the parent brings it up again. So it could be a couple sessions. And then parents will typically ask about like my experiences. Because then I'll say like, Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you, it's okay if I read out what the
Yeah.
chat said. So a listener, thanks so much for putting this in, Vanessa. Vanessa said, that's insane. I would think they'd love that about you. I think you've had some families who really value that, right?
Yeah, some families are like, wow, I love that like my autistic child has like an autistic adult in their life. Like that's really cool. Some families really don't like it.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, those parents have a lot of like that internalized ableism that they have to work through. Um, and maybe I really am not the one for the family. I could be the one for the kid, but
Mhm.
it's bittersweet, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know what I was saying.
Me either.
Yeah.
Well,
um,
bye.
goodbye, Paula.
We were talking about families, like kind of onboarding them to the ideas around GLP. Does this fit your kid?
Yeah,
You did self-disclosure.
yeah. Um, yeah, and usually like it's kind of like that connection seeking and I think parents seem to like that a little bit more than just being like, I think your kid is a GLP instead of, I don't know, being like, I'm a GLP and I'm seeing similarities in the way that we communicate. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah,
sometimes that's helpful for them. Ah,
I think yeah, for every single family is different, every single kid is different, and everyone's processing of this information of how they want to like navigate parenting and their life based on participating in therapy. What does this mean about their family's life, about their child? But I've heard from there's one dad who will send me links of anytime like a neurodivergent person is out there just like crushing it in some way, but like still being their true self. He'll send me a link about that because it's just like for him seeing autistic people, neurodivergent people like out there as representation where he's like his son can see himself in these people. It's really motivating and inspiring. So for some people that some families you work with, that might be like really grounding and helpful for them of like, okay, you've lived this. Like I can really like show up and experience this with someone who has lived it and understands themselves with it. I'm seeing in the chat. It's not me, it's them in their case. They're on their own journey. From this is Miss Ada. They're on their own journey and not ready to be welcoming yet, creating space for families who are ready to welcome you on their communication journey. That's lovely. I think there's one more thing. If I can pull it on my brain about telehealth. Oh, so I know a big part of telehealth, especially for younger kids, is coaching and like giving techniques of things that they can, or even if just like a family is like listening in and figuring out like, oh, I want to do that with my kid too. What are some of the main strategies you recommend to families in telehealth for helping their kids Gestalt language?
good question. I think so. It really depends on where the family is. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, but like, I can see like some families where like they definitely have been through some therapy where, or they've experienced a lot of therapy where it's very much like, what's this? What's that? What's this? So really having to like start from kind of square one and like building up kind of what my expectations are. Because I think a lot of times when working with GLPs, GLP, like therapy with GLPs looks a lot different in my perspective than working with a lot of different clients. And there's a lot of wait time. There's a lot of, modeling without expectation, my favorite thing to say. So a lot of my coaching is about modeling without expectation and saying, like, you're allowed to say whatever you want to them. You're allowed to model these different phrases, and it is absolutely okay if they're not saying it back. There is no expectation from me when I'm watching you to have the kids say it back. you're not failing at speech therapy. Like, it's fine. I know it says speech therapy, but I'm not like counting like one, two, three, four, how many times they're saying whatever I want you to model. And I think also another big thing that I focus on in parent coaching beyond modeling without expectation is formatting how gestalts can look, because I think a lot of times parents kind of go to the simple like I want this, I want that, and that's not just
Or the really common ones that are like out in the like social media, let's, it's, that's, which
yeah,
are they're great. They're really good declaratives, but then sometimes we can get stuck on them where everything is it's that's let's.
yeah,
Um, but like you said, like the ones where you model that like you really believe it, and that's where I think like timbre really comes in and like silly character voices. If I'm like, come on, let's go, that's not gonna land, but like, come on, let's go. Like that is where I see kids really like, click in because the emotion is really clear. So modeling without expectation, really believing in what you're modeling.
yeah.
Then someone just put something really amazing in the chat that I think is a really good note to end on. So, do you see what Katrina wrote?
No, I have to open things.
Yeah, open the chat. It's a it's a perfect note to end on.
Stop.
Do you want to read it or should I?
You read it.
Okay. Katrina said, Katrina's an SLP school-based mom to two autistic GLP dudes, 8 and 10, who are currently bouncing around in the background, and said, Mom, they're talking about our superpowers.
I could cry. I love that.
All right, we have to end it there. Andi, thank you. It was so fun to have you. You're hilarious. I really appreciate you talking about your lived experience with this, what's working for the kids that you're working with, being honest about some of the challenges. And for those of you who are listening, if you are here for the live course and you want to get credit for this hour because the end of the year is coming, and I know some of you don't have all the hours that you need yet. Make sure that you complete the course before the end of the day, so that your speech therapy PD account is up to date. And if you're listening later and you want to get the hour for free, use my code Gestalt33 to do that. If you loved Andi's episode and you want them to come back as much as I do, make sure that you let me know on Instagram. Give us 5 stars or four. 4 or 5 is fine on all the streaming platforms. And I hope to have you come back in 2026. This is our final episode of the year. I'm looking forward to having more therapists, parents, and next year I'm really leaning into having researchers and people from academia coming in. This was really the year of talking to a lot of families and therapists. Next year, I'm excited to see where the research is going. So thanks again, Andi.